What's up, Savages? Welcome to the Savage Syndicate podcast, where I inspire the average person how to become hard to kill. Physically, mentally, spiritually, financially. Each one of my guests is going to help you become hard to kill in one of those aspects. So sit back, enjoy, subscribe, share, and stay safe, stay savage, stay hard to kill. Welcome, Savages. This is my first time having a repeat guest on the Savage
Yeah.
Syndicate podcast. Welcome, Jake Barrena. How are you doing,
Thank
my man?
you. I'm good. I'm good, sir. How are you?
I am awesome. Since we last talked, you've been a little busy.
Yes, I have.
What is one of those pictures behind you? What did you accomplish since the last time we talked?
So I wrote a book, published a book that is Carpe Now. Carpe Now, baby.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
since he's the first guest coming on for the second time. So it's
Go.
great to have you on, Jake. I appreciate it.
Thank
We
you.
haven't seen each other in a little bit. We used to see each other at the gym every morning. Then
Mm-hmm.
I got busted up and hurt, and I started working out at home a little bit. I do want to go back, but we were part of the 5 a.m. crew, 6 a.m. crew that,
5:30, 6 a.m., right around there. Yeah, early. I'm still there. You're not there anymore. It makes me sad.
I know I see some of your videos you posted from the sauna, which I could only imagine walking by the sauna and seeing you in there doing all your
Yeah.
motivational stuff. I love it. Well, congratulations on the book, my man. The book is
Thank you.
called Carpe Now:
Yep.
10 Habits to Master the Authentic You. Eliminate
Mm-hmm.
excuses and create the blueprint for your best life. So let's just
Sure.
jump in right into it. What inspired you? What made you want to write this book?
Well, for me, this is the life that I've lived for the last couple of decades. I've really put these principles that are in the book to practice in my life. I didn't say to myself, I want to write a book about my life and show people how cool and awesome I am. It was rather, okay, how can I help people? How can I give people practical habits or tools to be able to implement in their life? For instance, so I do some performance coaching. I had a client here earlier. We were talking about what does it take to live a life full of energy and passion. And in that, you would think on the surface, maybe have more caffeine or work out or do something that's going to give you energy and stimulate you to live a passionate life. I would challenge that thought and say it's really someone who knows their mission in life. So someone who knows their mission in life will then have an endless tap of energy and passion for life. So this book really comes down to a place where I really want people to seize their best life, whether that's someone that is already doing all the good things that you can do in order to maximize your life like you are. You're hyper analyzing all these little details of your life and saying like, I can do this better, and if I do, it's going to give me this in return. So in the same way, I wanted to compile a book that could inspire people at whatever level they're at, whether they've already put in the work or they're lazy and doing nothing with their life, and inspire them to the next level of seizing their life. I mean, the definition of seizing is to go after, to seek, to be diligent, to the ball is in your court, so go get it done. And there's not a lot of people doing that. You have people
Yeah.
that complain about their fitness, and they want to lose that 30, 40 pounds or whatever it may be, and they've been telling themselves the same story for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And it's like, why don't you just go and do it? You have to not only dream, but you have to apply these principles to your life in order to truly live an amazing life.
Yeah,
So
and that's
that's the book.
I I did, and I always bust my wife's balls about this.
Yeah.
I didn't read it. I listened to it because I am
Mm,
a very avid reader and I love to read, but
yeah.
I also walk in the morning. My dog's
Mm,
3.5 miles, and I'm like, well, I'm going to listen to this book. So I started listening to more audiobooks.
mm,
Yours was one of them. And what I liked about your book was the authentic you.
mm,
And we've talked about your book in conversations, and it's not just you telling us what to do, right? It's not just saying,
mm,
hey, do 1 through 10. What I liked about the book is it's how it impacted you. You're not telling us to do something that you already haven't done, lived through,
Yeah.
or done so in your life. So walk
Mm,
us through that part. Like, how do you find the authentic you? How did you find your own authentic you? How did you get to that place in your life?
mm. So really interesting. That's a good question. It was a process. It was a chiseling away process that took years and years and years. It's one of those things that when my life changed, July 15th, 2001, uh, I wanted to live my best life, which was a similar motto that I had in my pre-life, in my first life. Before my life transformed, I decided to take a different path. I wanted to live my best life, but it was malicious. It was selfish, and it was all about me, and it was all about what was best for um, my progress.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it was the same motto, which is actually pretty funny when I look back and I think of the younger version of me or my first life. And then after I changed my life, I made a radical choice and I said, I'm no longer going to do drugs and party and live a life of selfishness. I want to give back to other people. And in order for me to live this abundant life that I had planned for myself, that I believe God has planned for me and for everyone, is that I'm going to have to put in the work. I can't just sit idly by. I have to do something about this. And so in this process, it just took a long time. It took a long time to discover my mission and took a long time to build the calluses necessary to realize, man, I have the ability to persevere through all of life's adversities. And going back to the philosophy of being a winner, my definition is someone that never gives up. So I'm never going to give up, and I'm in this life for a reason, and I'm going to give it my all. So I might as well learn along the way and be able to hopefully bring people along with me in that journey. And my life is really defined, I would like it to be defined by bringing people with me on this journey instead of just living an awesome life myself, which I feel so blessed in so many fronts. I love your shirt physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially. I feel blessed in all those categories. I put in the work to make sure that those have come true in my life, but I want to see other people get there too. So that's where my heart's at.
This is kind of a two question or two parter.
Mm, yeah.
One, where do you think your life would be now if you didn't have that moment in July 15th, I believe it was, that
Mhm.
really turned your life around? One. And two, do you know or talk to anybody from that past life before July 15th?
Okay, so first question, I would say that I would be either dead, but more likely I would be in a mental hospital. So I was literally post July 15th, 2001. As you know from my book, I went through a very intense 12-day, you can call it bad trip, but this episode where I was losing my mind and I had overdosed on Vicodin. I didn't realize that. And it was me going down this psychological thriller that was not very fun. It was not pleasant at all. And so I believe if it wasn't for God, then I probably wouldn't be where I'm at now. And then those friends, I keep in contact with a couple of them. One of the things that I did do that was a practical solution to separate myself from my old life is I got rid of all my old friends. As much as I loved them, as much as I wanted to be around them, they all partied, they all drank. I was granted the worst kid in that group for sure, but I didn't want to be influenced. So I just said, no, I'm not doing this. And so
Mhm.
those guys, those party guys, which there was a core probably 10 to 12 of us, decided to no longer hang out with them. And so I kind of disappeared, I'd say, for years. And I slowly but surely rekindled some of these friendships where they would encounter me. And unfortunately, out of that core group of a dozen guys, a very large portion of them went over the edge and they overdosed on other drugs. And they were chemically imbalanced at that point. So bipolar, schizophrenic, we got meth involved in that picture. So unfortunately, that's the path that a lot of them took. And I didn't want to take that path, of course. And then some of them ended up changing their life around, which is incredible. And they're now all throughout the nation. I keep in touch with a few of them. A couple of them have my book, read my book, which is awesome. Kind of crazy for them to read my book and to go, wow, I didn't realize you went through all of that, because I wasn't telling anyone exactly
Mm.
what was happening, because I didn't want to give it power. I didn't want to tell people like I'm losing my mind, because they would be like, you're losing your mind. You're crazy. So I keep in touch with some of them. And then there were some that were more like friend acquaintances that I'll run into on the street from time to time, just still being in Orange County. And that's kind of wild, because they remember who I was, the party guy. And so to be where I'm at now, which is kind of the opposite, not the party guy, don't really drink, don't do drugs, try to keep it straight laced, not for the sake of keeping it straight laced, but for the sake of doing what's best for me, for God, for my family, for my community, and all of that. So, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
What's been the feedback from your friends, family? I know you have a lot of reviews in there. I've left a review. But what's
yeah.
been the feedback mostly from people that have read it?
I would say the resounding feedback that I've gotten is that the book is very authentic and
Mm.
very transparent, in that I share things that most people aren't comfortable to share, as far as all my thoughts, all my feelings, all my fears, all my failures, and then some successes as well.
Was that hard for you to do? Was that hard for you to put? Because I kind of felt like in that book that I wrote, it was kind of like therapy for me, right? Like
Mm,
I'm not a big sharer, like right. I'm
mm,
not like I think I keep things pretty sheltered in. But it's kind of like cathartic to just put it
mm.
down on paper and like, hey, maybe this could help somebody else, right? Did
Yeah,
you find that when in your writing process?
I would say cathartic, yes, for sure. Difficult, no. I think that's one of the things that is a part of my past, is that I used to be so calloused and so cold and so to myself. I still had a similar personality. I was more charismatic. I was more optimistic, more of an extrovert, but I didn't share my feelings. And so when my life changed and I decided to take this new path, I decided to say, you know what? I'm just going to bear all of me to the light, whether people like it or not.
Mhm.
And so I would say it's not a natural gift, but it's become a superpower, in that I am absolutely comfortable with who I am. And if someone doesn't like it, okay, then we don't have to be friends. We don't have to be associated with each other. um, if I can learn from people, if I'm doing something wrong, and if I can take a course correction in that regard, great. Yes, I want to learn new habits. I want to do better in life for sure. But if you don't like, the color of my skin, or the fact that I have a beard, or the fact that I love mixed martial arts and other things like that, well, that's fine. Then we don't have to be friends. So yeah, no, I wouldn't say it was difficult, but it was definitely transformative. Just being able to put it on a book and say, yeah, here's my story, and kind of all packaged nice and tight, opposed to, we all have a story, and someone asks about your story. And even now, as I tell you my story, I'm telling you my story in part. I'm not
Mhm.
telling you every little detail. And I couldn't even actually put the whole thing in the book, because it's so big, as far as my story, your story, all of our stories. But at least the book gives you the ability to put as much detail as possible that's relevant to what you're trying to talk about. So in that sense, yeah, it was awesome. I loved it. I'm sure you did too with your book, which is so cool.
Yeah. What's up, Savages? Thank you guys for watching or listening to the Savage Syndicate podcast. I appreciate it. I want to take a quick minute to talk to you guys about the Savage Syndicate group I created. I created the Savage Syndicate group with one goal in mind: inspiring you guys on how to become hard to kill. How to become hard to kill physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially. Inside the Savage Syndicate group, you will have videos, 160 videos inside of a library teaching you the fundamentals of striking, groundwork, situational awareness, tutorials on gas station safety, restaurant safety, large groups, multiple attackers. All of that is inside this library that I created for you. I also have my own personal workouts that I do every morning, all under 30 minutes. They're inside of here. I also have live Zoom calls, either hosting with myself or I have guests on who are professionals at becoming hard to kill. Whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, or financial, all of these are experts here and geared towards making you hard to kill. So go to www.savagesyndicategroup.com, sign up, see you on the inside. Stay safe, stay savage, stay hard to kill.
Yeah.
What you talk about the 10 habits to master,
Mm.
the authentic you. Walk us through how you started to find those 10 habits and without giving all of them away, maybe pick 2 or 3 to share with us, but how did you make those your daily habits, or how did you find them?
Yeah, so I would say it's not a habit, but I believe when you first open the book, as you know, the introduction is be present. So
Mhm.
before you even start to digest habits or information in general, you have to be in the right headspace to take in and absorb new information. So I think the first step would be okay, well, if I'm gonna become my best self, and I'm now taking myself back to that place of ingesting information, then I have to be in the right space to humble myself to learn information. And so I realized at a young age, I was 18, that if I'm going to learn these habits, learn these good qualities that I want to portray in my life and to live in my life that I see in other people that have relational success or spiritual success or financial success, then I'm going to have to be fully present. And so anytime I ever learn something new, I go back to that place when my life transformed and say, okay, let's not be pompous. Let's not be a know-it-all. Even if I feel like I know something about something, I'm going to humble my mind and try to take in information from a different perspective, a different viewpoint, and really start what would be like ground zero again. Even if I know a lot about something, like you know a lot about mixed martial arts, maybe you can still humble your mind and take a step back and be a true master and realize that a true master is still an apprentice and is still learning and is still trying to digest. So I found very quickly my foundation, and my foundation is God and my relationship with God. And that was kind of my key anchor to say, all right, I know He's here with me. I know He's going to give me the strength. So what's next? And at that point, it was, well, maybe I should figure out why I'm here. Like, what am I doing on this planet? So my first task was to find my mission. And in discovering my mission, um, I had to ask myself a lot of questions. Questions like, why am I here? What am I doing with my life? What are my gifts? What are my talents? What are the things that interest me with life? And how could I apply this to my life? In discovering my mission, I had to think about things that meant something to me, and something that meant something to me sounds cliche, but love and loving people, loving myself, and embracing who I am. And so in discovering that, I'm like, well, love is definitely a part of my mission. I know that. So I knew that love was going to be there. And then I would just slowly but surely chisel away at the idea of what else is it. I love business. And flash forward, I've been an entrepreneur for 2 decades. I love enterprise. So entrepreneurship, it's definitely got to be a part of it. And so slowly but surely, I was able to cultivate exactly what that mission was. And I think the beautiful thing about a mission is that when I wrote the book, my mission was to build a legacy of faith, love, and entrepreneurship. But I believe a mission changes, and it
Mhm.
it grows, and it takes this path. that maybe you did expect or you didn't expect. But if you're evolving, if you're growing as a person, then your mission will change, and that's okay. So now my mission is to build a legacy of authenticity, which is open to a lot more interpretation. Legacy is huge for me. I want to instill something in my kids, and when I pass on, that I want people to go, Jake established this, as in who he was. And it's very important that I live an authentic life, as in the life that I believe that God designed for me, and more specifically, to help people, to love people, to give back to people, to see people lifted up. So, going back to mission, discovering my mission was okay, great, this is fantastic. How am I going to do this in my life? And then at that point, I've always been kind of a engineer in the way that I think. I need to put together a blueprint. So at the time, I just generically called it a game plan. I've always loved that idea of being a sport guy. It's like, let's put together a game plan and let's just execute. And in the business world, a business plan. So I started to put together these game plans, which are blueprints to reach these goals, these small milestones. Like I want to get a six pack. I want to run a marathon. And then it would just be these short term goals. And then I created these longer term goals. And I feel like as my mind got more stretched, I realized, well, what would it look like to be 80 years old or 100 years old, or where do I want to be at that point in my life? Well, shoot, how am I going to get there? And then that changed my blueprint. It gave me a bigger scope of things. And then I realized, looking at it, like my blueprint is intense, like I think anyone else's is. So how am I going to do that? Man, I got to persevere. Like I'm going to have to really push through the muck of life. And so you can see where I'm going. Then at that point, I'm going to have the stamina necessary to be able to persevere. So I need to have a strong level of fitness. Like, yeah, I like the idea of having a six pack, got a six pack. I'd flex right now, but I probably shouldn't. I'll rip my shirt. But I'm just joking. I like looking good. I like the comments that I get from that, but that's not like my anchor. My anchor is feeling good and
Mhm.
living to a ripe old age of 100 and thriving in that life. I don't want to be 80 and be like that. Like I want to feel like I can still do things. Mentally and physically there. So fitness is a huge part of it. I'm going to need to have a group of people around me that are my community that will support me. So my kids, my wife, people like you, people that I have grown close with, that I have similarities with, that can also challenge me. You don't believe in God. I believe in God. I think that's beautiful. I love the fact that we're good friends, and we can have a difference of a big opinion like that and still be good friends and be challenged. I think being in a community of people that challenge you is a beautiful thing. And that takes a lot of denial, self denial. And in that self denial, you realize that you need to be selfless through this life in order to ingest information, in order to be challenged. And in being challenged, you're in this growth process. So obviously I'm working you through the habits right now. You're in this growth process of learning, cultivating, not just physically but spiritually and mentally. And then once you do that for yourself, maybe you should then do that for other people. Like you take those growth habits and say, it's not just about me, but it's about other people. And in order to do that, you're going to have to be disciplined in order to achieve your mission, achieve your fitness, to have perseverance, to give back to the community, to be selfless. And so that's going to take a never quit mindset. And in order for you to have a firm mindset, to be obstinate towards your goals and your dreams and your ambitions, you're going to have to seize that every day of your life. And that just goes back to the book. But the book is about maximizing your every moment, your every gasp. I've always had a feeling that when I die, I'm going to stand before God, and I don't want him to be like, "Hey, you lived a good life," or "You lived an average life." It's more like he gasps and he's like, "Dang, you did it! Like you tried everything you could." Whether it was good, as in like, man, you missed the mark, as in like, but the effort is a big thing for me to be able to do my best based on what I believe. And based on
Mhm.
what I believe is loving people, giving back to people, and lifting people up with me in this process of living my best life.
Did and you're answering the second one. I'll answer the first one for
Yeah.
ask the first one. Did you have a mentor, like, so that July 15th where your life changed, you found God, did you have a mentor to kind of bounce all of these questions about everything that you had? Did you have somebody to go to and talk to, or did you just, like, start researching, start learning, start putting yourself out there? What helped you get along to that process?
So I did have people that I looked up to and said, all right, this person is someone that I want to emulate, but it wasn't individuals that I always had a relationship with that was physical, as in like people that I actually knew. It could have
Mhm,
been just someone that I admired and looked up to. So there was, um, let's think of a, so Lee Strobel is an author, speaker, and he's someone that I looked up to. C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, and he's one of the most influential writers. I started to read a lot of books, of course. So I'm labeling people that, naming people that I did not know, but people that had very interesting thoughts. They didn't think inside this bubble, they thought outside of it. And it was very different compared to how everyone else thinks. Um, and so, yes, I had some people that were also in my circle. There was a Dan Nervous, Dr. Dan Nervous, that was a friend of mine that is an intellectual type that I definitely had some similarities with, but we were very different.
mhm,
As intellectual as I am, I'm not as intellectual as him. I mean, literally, Dan could be wrong on this, but he's got like 5 doctorates, like 5 masters, and like 5 other majors. I mean, it's just insane. And he's my age, I think, maybe a little bit older, maybe like 45, something like that. I'm 40, 41. So I admired his tenacity when it came to education. And so I was like, I want to be like that. Maybe not like him, but I want to challenge myself the way that I see him challenge himself. So I guess I would just take little bits and pieces from, like, I love your brand, like Savage Syndicate. Just be savage in life. Like,
mhm.
seize it, go for it. It's the same kind of concept as Carpe Now. It's just a little bit different, but it's the same thing. So I extracted little morsels from people that I saw that were really trying to reach for the stars. And that's hard because there's not a lot of people actually trying to reach for the stars. There's not a lot of people that are actually trying to push the envelope consistently,
Yeah.
day in and day out. There's people that do it for seasons, but then they give up, you know?
Well, I'm bouncing around here because I had another question lined up, but since you
Yeah.
said that, why do you think most people don't wanna be the authentic self? Why don't they what is standing in their way of going out there and getting that six pack or setting little goals, setting little milestones in their life? Like, what do you think right now, current situation, 2024, most people are lazy? I mean, I got my own opinion of why most
Yeah.
people do what they do, but what's
Yeah.
your opinion on why what is holding most people back from achieving their best selves?
I think it's an easy answer. I think they're not willing to admit the truth,
Mhm,
and the truth sometimes really hurts. And in order to start that journey of finding their authentic self, they need to expose who they are, all of who they are, to the light. So most people are willing to admit their praises and their good side, but maybe not the difficulties of life that they've had to face. And people have had tragedy in their life, whether they've lost loved ones or they were molested or whatever it may be. There's a lot of bad things that can happen in your life. You deal with these things, and unfortunately, a lot of people just suppress those feelings, and they're
mhm,
not really willing to bring them up and to really try to process them. So I think if people actually processed their feelings and their fears, you think about what is the opposite of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having a life that is full of love And the opposite of love is fear. So people typically live in fear, fear of rejection, fear of their feelings, fear of. So I think if people just step up and say, all right, like this is who I am, and maybe really look in the mirror and go, man, I suck. Okay, how am I going to fix that? Everyone loves a redemption story. Everyone loves it. It's amazing how people can hate someone, but if they truly change, people are like, amazing. That's fantastic. Maybe they don't want to have a relationship with them, but it's like kudos to you.
Yeah.
So I think people just got to face who they really are.
Well, I like what you said earlier in the conversation about not giving a shit what people think, right?
Yeah.
Peeling off all the like we're in such a cancel culture now where most people are afraid to let their true colors fly because, oh, I don't
Yeah.
want I'll get fired or my spouse might
Opinion.
disagree, my parents might whatever
Hmm.
the reason is. I really admire it when you said it that once you pull off that mask that you're giving to everybody, you really kind of like, hey, I don't give a shit if I'm canceled because it's who I am. What are you going to cancel
Hmm.
me for? I've already got my family. I've got my business, being an entrepreneur. I've gotten success in so many different levels. Cancel me all you want. I'm here and this is what I'm about. So,
Yep.
I admire that you do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I wish I could be so brazen to do some of that in my own profession, in my own stuff, because I know there's some things that, my wife always tells me, your sense of humor is too dark. You can't say that on Instagram. I'm like, people, I don't have a huge following, so it's not like I'm gonna offend some random people. It's like they knew who I am. They
Yeah.
have a sense of
Yeah.
humor. So I think
For
that's
sure.
one of the things a lot of people are holding themselves back because they don't, "Oh, if I do X, I'm gonna get put in this box, or if I do this, I'm gonna offend this."
Hmm.
It's like, you know what? You're gonna offend there's people that I know that don't like that book, that are fighters, and it kinda hurt me that I'm taking criticism of some guys that I thought were pretty badass savages, and it's like, well, now you're not the same guy I thought you were because that book isn't saying I'm hard to kill. Watch me be a black belt at this and the UFC. It's saying, hey, these are things that like I have a story. This is my story. This is how I have not been killed in 49 years of life, and this
Yeah.
is how I've done it. Right. So
Yeah.
I think pulling that mask back and being vulnerable is a
Mm.
is admirable. But most people won't
Mm.
do it. Most people don't do it, and they spend their whole life with their head in the sand because they're afraid to do it. I think that's a
Yeah.
bad way to live. But
Mm.
speaking of a little bit earlier, is like you didn't have the mentor. You went out and researched and found people that you followed. Are you
Yeah.
mentoring people now? Are people coming up to you after maybe a dad read your book and said, you know what, I see my son going down a similar path, or my kid, or whatever, and reached out to you? I know you're on some stages. Tell us about that. Of maybe helping other people that were in your situation.
Yeah. So I do coach. I have been coaching for about 20 years, which is crazy because when I originally started coaching, it wasn't labeled a coach. It was working with youth at a church, but I
Mm,
was absolutely coaching the youth. It was high school and junior high, and I had a passion for it. And then I became a personal trainer, which is a coach.
mm,
And my style of coaching was always therapy. It was less about like, yeah, I know you want to lose 30 pounds, but why? Oh,
yeah.
so that's why. But like, why? And I've always wanted to get deep with people. And then ever since the book came out, I would say, I wouldn't say more, but I would say it's been shifted just a little bit different in that it's more of a professional type individual that says, hey, it seems like you've been through enough to give me counsel on, for instance, I had a client just last week say, I have to speak to a staff member that I'm either A, going to have to let go, depending on how they receive this information, um, or course correction, and they go down the right path. And I'm really nervous about it. What do you think I should say to them? And I gave them my input and wisdom. And so I think going back to what we talked about earlier, being vulnerable, I'm vulnerable enough to say I don't have all the answers. So what I'm willing to do though is listen to people and then give them my input, whether they like it or not.
Mm,
Legitimately, I just had a coaching session before this podcast, and I was speaking to my client about pretty much this same very thing. And in that, it takes it takes that genuineness, that realness, that authenticity to be able to work on yourself, but let alone work on people. So to be able to listen to people, and sometimes, you know, someone might come to you with an issue, and that issue is, I need help with this, but it's actually not that. It's something else. So you might, through listening to that individual, you might catch on that, well, if I fix this, then we can fix this.
Mm.
And maybe if you fix this, the culprit of whatever that issue is, you fix 10 things. So I am doing a lot more coaching, more performance coaching, more mindset coaching, more. I have some weight loss clients that are trying to lose weight, but I think fundamentally, if they're struggling to lose weight, it's because they have a mental blockade. So you got to get past those barriers. So I enjoy the one-on-one. I would say that I don't enjoy it as much as speaking on stage. I feel like when I'm on stage, I'm energized to a whole nother level opposed to one-on-one. To be honest, I enjoy it, but there's not as much energy um, as with the crowd. With the crowd, I just feed off that. And I'm a little fluid in that when there's a lot of people, I'm jacked. When there's one person, I'm at a certain tone, and I'm not looking to like overwhelm one individual and get like all cray cray on them, but I have these energy reserves that I tap into when I get to speak in front of people, and I just love it. I get fired up.
How did you know? When did you find out that you like being on stage? Because I'm in Toastmasters, and I
Mm,
know most people are terrified of getting in
yeah,
front of people and
yeah.
speaking. When did you realize you had that gift of, spreading your message to people on the stage?
So about 20 years ago, I started to do some public speaking, and I enjoyed it back then. And I decided to take another path. I was speaking to groups of, on the low end, 30 to on the high end, a couple hundred. And then I took this personal training path, which was more one on one. I wasn't in front of people like that anymore. And I didn't really think twice about it. So I knew I had something there, but I didn't really hone in on it. I was young too. I'm 41 now, and I was 18, 19, 20 at the time. And then it seemed like I had opportunities to speak over the last decade or two, but I wouldn't always seize those opportunities. And I wouldn't run from it, but I was like, I honestly, as much as it seems like it's just the opposite, I never really cared for the spotlight.
Mhm.
I recognize I could be in the spotlight, but I don't need the attention on me. Even though I do feed off people's energy, like, but if there's someone else that I can tell needs that to feel satisfied, more power to you, buddy. Go for it. Like that's great. I just don't feel like I need it. So if I was in a room with three people that would like to speak, if they wanted to speak before me, I'd be like, go for it, man. It's cool. But I guess it it it's something that is new because in the last couple of years I've spoken more, and I've learned that it's really challenged going back to that transparency thing. Think about it. If someone doesn't like to speak, as they're walking up on stage, they're thinking thoughts that are probably negative, and they're suppressing their God given feelings that want to come out, but they don't know how to bring them out because they're listening to that negative narrative in their head, opposed to stepping up there and just going like, are you ready? I'm about to attack it, and just
Yeah.
full steam, just blow it out there. So I think the thing that I love about speaking is it absolutely requires all of me to get up there and to say, this is who I am, and get ready. You like that energy? Great. You don't like that energy? Sorry, this is who I am. Because I'm one to just not like shout, but I'm one to expose all of me. So if I'm going to like lay down some tears because I'm getting emotional, hey, that's just the way it is. If I'm one that's going to get loud and a little preachy, then I'm going to get a little loud and preachy. If I'm one that's going to get a little bit like drill sergeant-ish, then I'm going to do that. But if I'm gonna bring it down and get a little softer, I'll do that too. It's more of like playing with the emotions that I know that God has given me to be able to convey whatever that message is. So yeah,
Do you think what was July 15th when you changed? How old were you? 18?
18.
If you were 16-year-old Jake and
Hmm.
heard 41-year-old Jake on stage, do you think it would be enough to motivate you to change your ways at 16?
Probably not. I have asked questions like that in the past, and I think that my story is so unique that I was so obstinate and hard headed that it probably could have just been that one thing that got me to the point of change. Just
Mm,
because I was so hard headed. I mean, I just, at 16, I just thought I knew everything. Even though in my mind, I'm like, no, I don't know everything. But yeah, I know everything.
yeah.
But I guess maybe what 16-year-old doesn't, but no, probably not. But I do recall um, hearing messages or hearing there was a Evander Holyfield that came to speak to our school when I was in, I think, elementary school. And I remember he spoke with such passion that I was like, whoa, that's cool. I didn't know what that was. I didn't even understand the message, but I was like, man, this guy's
Was
intense.
was it Evander with ears or no ears? Did he already get bit? Did Tyson already take a chunk out of his ear?
Um, so I want to say Tyson already took a chunk out of his ear. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember that. That's
Yeah.
crazy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think probably not. Probably not, to be honest. That's a good question, though. That's a thinker.
Yeah. How has writing the book changed you now? Like, how has it changed
Hmm.
any perspective or just made your voice a little louder about listen to my story, or how's it changed you?
So I was actually just talking to someone about this the other day. I think it's changed my perspective on one that I love to write. Didn't realize that. I've been doing social media and creating copy for social media for probably 12 years and writing articles here and there for magazines and other little things. And and I really enjoyed it. But I never translated that, even writing copy for a social media post, to writing a book. And it's the
Mhm,
same thing. So if you can do that and you enjoy it, then writing a book is the same. So it opened up my mind to say, man, I can write a book about anything. I can write a book about you. I can write a book about this computer. I can write a book about my microphone. I can write a book about horticulture, which I don't know much about, which is, plants, vegetation, all that. But the difference is some things that I write a book on, it's going to be like super thin. It's going to be a thin book.
mhm.
It might be a 10 pager, a 15 pager. And then some items will be more like 200 pages, maybe 3, maybe 500. So if I can write a book about anything, I guess my next, and if I enjoy writing, what am I going to write next? So I'm
Mhm.
working on 3 book concepts and I'm just trying to iron down which one I want to hit first. So I'm either going to write about grace and discipline. So it's the balance between grace and discipline and how those two work together, how they supplement each other, how they help each other.
With
Or
telling your own story of how they work, or is it because that's completely different?
yeah, so not my story at all. Yeah, so just how grace, like for instance, grace is something that I believe that you must first receive from God. You must first acknowledge and receive God's grace. Then you must give yourself grace because we've all made mistakes. So you give yourself grace because some people are limited by the things that they've done in the past. I can't do that because I tried it before. And remember that one time I got on stage and I started to stutter and people laughed at me and blah, 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 whatever that is. And then you must give that grace to people. So we get the grace from God, we give the grace to ourselves, and then we give grace to people. And then finally, we must act out that grace. So if you've really received grace for for yourself and for other people, then at that point you must go show that you have been forgiven, that you have forgiven yourself. Someone who walks light on their feet is someone that has probably forgiven themselves of the mistakes that they have made,
Mhm.
and they've also forgiven other people. And then it takes you into this path of discipline, and the discipline that it requires to be successful, the discipline that it requires to prove that grace, to live a good life. Everything that I like to talk about is everything having to do with living a blessed, abundant life. Because I think there's a lot of people that are struggling with that very notion, which is, man, I'm just trying to like go day by day. I'm not in a place to think about an abundant life. I'm just trying to like pay my bills and go home and watch Netflix.
Mhm.
And I think that that person maybe that is content with that is probably missing out on something that is really satisfying, which is, you know, self growth and the happiness that could be found in developing your best version. So, and then I have some other book ideas too.
Well, I wanted to hear what those other book ideas were. What were the other 2?
So the other one is spiritual battle. So this one's intense, but I think that there's a spiritual battle going on at some level, and you can't see it, but this battle is something that is influencing us to think a certain way, to operate a certain way, whether it's good or it's bad. And because of this battle, we're being influenced and led down this path that we are choosing to take. And so I think the awareness of the spiritual battle and equipping yourself with the necessary tools to fight back. It's hard to fight against something that you can't see, but if you knew that, if you believe and you knew that it was there and you could fight back, you're going to be more equipped to be successful in life and the life to come too. And then the last book concept is it's about blueprint. So I think that was one thing that everyone really enjoyed in the book, which was creating a blueprint for their life. And so
Mhm.
this one is more of a deep dive into creating a blueprint for your best life. So those are my 3 book ideas.
Which
Just
which
deciding
one
which one to go
which
with.
one I was gonna say, which one are you leaning towards?
So, do you know mind mapping? Mind mapping?
No.
Familiar with that? So mind mapping would be mapping down a concept like grace and discipline on a sheet of paper, and let's just say you put it in the middle and you put a bubble around it, and you go, okay, if I were to write about this or create something about this, what would I say? Even if it was like, if I'm going to write about Josh, okay, I'm gonna put Josh in the middle of my sheet of paper, put a circle around it. How would I define Josh? Okay, so I'd first write over here family. And he's a big family guy for sure. That's definitely Josh. So I put family, put a line, put a little circle on it, and be like, dude, he's a savage. And I put down savage, and maybe there's a further explanation there, but he's savage. And I put down this guy likes to surf, like he's for sure a surfer bra, like no doubt. So I put down surf. He loves mixed martial arts. So I would start to define what I believe you are based on my opinion from just looking at you. Then I'd be like, all right, chapter 1. What's chapter 1 going to be? Chapter 1 for sure. It's got to be his foundation. It's got to be his family. I'm going family first. And then so I start to compile what it looks like to write that book in kind of the framework, and then I create space to do it. And I think that's the fun part, which is okay. Now I'm about to write about Josh, and I'm going to write about his family, and this is going to be chapter 1 or the introduction or whatever it's going to be. Um, okay, what would I say about Josh and his family? And I would just go back on all my experiences with you around your son and your wife and at jiu-jitsu, and I would basically try to elaborate on and create stories on and principles on and action plans or slash items to convey who Josh is with his family. So I think when I think of writing a book, it's easy because I just take it step by step, opposed to like, oh man, like how am I going to write a book? Like that's just way too difficult. And I'm like, well, you got to get the right framework. And I think I figured out my framework, and that might change, but right now, that's what I'm going with. framework.
I think you should write the book on Josh. That sounds very appealing to me. I want to read
Let's go, baby.
it. Nice. Well,
Nice.
how can people find your book right now? Carpe Now.
So I self-published, so you can go to Amazon, just look up Carpe Now, Jake Barrena, and it will populate. The Audible is on all platforms, so you can go to Audible, the audio that is. You can go to Audible, you can go to Spotify, you can go to Apple. Just look up Carpe Now; it's there. If you go to my website, jakebarrena.com, then you can see all of my social media outlets along with how to get connected with me. There's links there to where you can go straight to Amazon or to Spotify or wherever you want to purchase the book, and keep it real simple and on a central little hub right there. So that's the best way.
And I'll put all the links for you watching it on YouTube, Spotify. I'll put all the links in there as well.
Okay, sweet
Um,
brother.
well, we'll wrap this up. But behind
Okay.
you it says,
Yeah.
"Be the authentic you."
Yes.
The quick version for somebody: how can people start to be the authentic self, themselves?
So put the mirror on yourself and do some self reflection and decide really, who do you want to be in this life? Do you want to live an average life? Do you want to live a complacent life? Or do you want to live your best life? And if you do, you're going to have to figure out what it's going to take in order to get there. So through that lens, through that mirror, you're going to have to do some deep diving, some chiseling into who you are, because maybe there's things in your life you have to change, and maybe there's things that you're already doing that are very good, and just continue to do that consistently. I think consistency in this game of discovering the authentic you is the key. As it is with business, life, and everything else, consistency, just doing the same thing over and over. Maybe you have to make little tweaks here or there, but if you're consistent and you do it every day, you'll eventually get there.
Love it. That's a great way
Yeah.
to end. Thank you, Jake. I
Yeah,
appreciate
baby.
you coming on. Go
Love you,
out
man.
and get his book, get the audio book if you have to, but either way, get this book in your sphere because I liked it. I really liked it. We talked about it afterwards about all the things
Yep.
that I appreciated reading it, and you know, I think you did great, my man. And I'm
Thanks,
eager
brother.
all three concepts, but I really like the Josh book that you were talking about. But again, Jake, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it,
Thanks,
brother. And
brother. I appreciate it, man.
yeah, all right, see
Thank
you
you,
soon,
man.
brother. See you.
All right, bye. Bye.
What's up, Savages? Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to that podcast. I really appreciate it. If you guys want more information or more content like this, visit me at www.savagesyndicategroup.com, where you could also join the Savage Syndicate group, where I have over 160 videos in a library of all things teaching you guys how to become hard to kill. So again, I appreciate it. Thank you for the support. Stay safe, stay savage, stay hard to kill.